Did you you know, as you had a greater tenure in the company, were you involved in any of the decisions in terms of creatively or business wise of where to run and some of the other fine points of say house shows or non televised events?
Not creatively. I did help the promotions of the company. Um, at one point, we ran a couple local things here in South Jersey, and I would help get flyers out and posters and all that kind of stuff because I was here. But
Mm.
then the offer came along about a year and a half before the company ended, um, to come on the promotions team. So again, with the flyers and all that kind of putting a street team together for towns, and I would do the secondary towns. You know, they would have a larger team for where we were maybe doing television. So let's say we're doing television Saturday night in Chicago. Well, Friday night we're at a smaller town. Peoria was what we did in Illinois. Um, so I would fly to Illinois and meet up with street team and get that all put together. If I needed to touch base with radio station or television or something with tickets or whatever, I'd be there to handle it for a few days. Then I'd catch up to wherever we were for the shows that weekend for the live events, but not creatively now.
Towards the end of the tenure, and there were rumors that Paulie was looking to get another television deal after you know, not the best deal with the Nashville network, et cetera, et cetera. Were you surprised when the last show happened and that was it? I've talked to a lot of ECW original folks, and some were like, no, knew it was happening. Some were completely taken off guard.
I kind of knew it was happening. I thought maybe we could get one more pay per view. We had a pay per view scheduled. I don't know if we had put tickets on sale or whatnot, but I think it was in New York, supposed to be in New York. And I thought, well, if we are going to end, that would probably be the best place to end. But they pulled the plug before we even got there, so it was a little surprise, but I kind of felt it coming on.
How did you find out personally?
And you know what? I don't even remember.
Mm.
It was such a shell shocking moment that yeah, I just didn't believe it because we kind of got, or at least some of us were, well, yeah, we can't, we're still going to do, we have, Danbury scheduled, or we have New York scheduled, and we're going to try to get those done. We're going to move on if we can. So it wasn't really like, oh, we're dead in the water. Sorry, guys. It was, they you tried to lead us on for more shows and hopefully it'll come through. But you can only hope and wait for so long
Mm.
until you see Paul on TV.
Yeah, I was also going to ask you about that when he was supposedly negotiating another deal, and then he was on Raw, which some of the ECW folks have said, yeah, it was a complete shock and
Right.
surprise.
But it could have been a working situation where, I mean, look at Jim Cornette. He was on TV and was still doing some Smoky Mountain. And they were starting to set up training territories. So there was the possibility that, hey, maybe ECW could be a territory for them, and we could be getting some guys to train to move on up. And hopefully, they'll ask me to be part of that. But that never happened. I think it would have been a great. I think ECW should have kind of stayed a little territorial. Would have helped the finances a little bit, I think, instead of flying everybody all over the country.
Did you have knowledge of the time, or was it super ultra kayfabe that WWE was financing ECW to an extent, weekly or monthly or whatever Mr. Heyman was receiving from Titan?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it. There was always the talk because, well, we have this guy or that guy, and they're also under contract with WWE. So there some kind of working arrangement, just not exactly know what the details were. But if it'll keep us afloat, I don't care.
Well, exactly, yeah. A fan on social media wanted me to ask you about the atmosphere in the company with the famous Mike Awesome, WCW, Taz comes back, takes the title off him, et cetera, et cetera. That very famous situation. What do you recall of that?
I'll tell you what, I don't know what the situation was like in the locker room, because I got pulled from the locker room and was the go-between between Paul and Tommy and Taz and Mike Awesome and Doug Dillinger. Mike came in with Doug Dillinger, head of security for WCW. And so I had to go. They're like, okay, go see Paul. He's at so-and-so restaurant in Indianapolis that night. That as soon as I pulled into the parking lot, go see Paul. So I went, and it was like a scene from The Sopranos or Godfather or something, where Paul's sitting in the middle of the table. It's like, one of those semicircle big tables at a Chinese restaurant, and all the boys are sitting around him. And so I was told, okay, here's the contract that for Mike. Tell him da 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 da. Do not venture from any other words. Don't say this instead of that. Very, very particular. So I went, here you go. They signed whatever, took it back. I think this is the right sequence. Came back with Taz and Dreamer, and Dreamer and I sat there with Doug. Taz and Mike went off and talked, I guess, specifics of the match and how it was going to be. Everything was settled. I went to the building, got dressed. The matches were already started. Got dressed. I did nothing until that match. I knew exactly what was going to happen and how it was going to go down, the whole thing. Mike through the front of the building and out through the building. Indianapolis cops escorting him. They did not want him in the locker room at all. Mm-hmm. I think maybe for his own safety, because there's some nutty people in our locker room. So, I mean, the match went down, whatever everybody's seen on TV, the match went down, and that was it. And like I said, it was a whirlwind, and I really, I don't know if I was lucky or not to be involved in it, but that's how it went down for me. Like I said, I wasn't in the locker room prior to, just before that. I mean, I had enough time just to get dressed and get out there for the match.
Wow. Very, very memorable moment. Fan is asking, Ibzan is asking your thoughts on, of course, we couldn't talk about the original ECW without Joey Styles and his innovative one-man booth commentary.
Joey was great at what he did. I give a lot of credit to Joey for people knowing the referees. He would make sure the referees were mentioned every show, in at least once in a match. And nobody was doing that. Nobody would do that. And I mean, for a while, you couldn't even, they mention them now every once in a while, but WWE never mentioned guys' names. WCW would, just because, Pee Wee Anderson, God bless him, God rest his soul, a great referee, was a bit of a character. So he would be mentioned. Tommy Young would be mentioned, but only if he got into a conflict with Ric Flair or did something with Jim Cornette. Yeah, John, I'm sure John would say this too. We owe Joey a lot. We can, nobody would know who we are.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the WWE and the one night stand pay-per-views. Two-part question. Can you talk about your thoughts on that and that experience, and then whether or not and I'm always interested in the answer to this question. Are you of the belief that WWE resurrected ECW following the success of the first one night stand in order to, for lack of a better term, kill the fan the enduring fan love and support of the original?
Absolutely. I believe it. They didn't want, or I shouldn't say they, I would say Vince McMahon did not want something that he didn't create to be more popular than anything he created. And the myth, the whatever you want to call it, of ECW was outshined what was going on with the Attitude Era. If it wasn't for, everyone would probably tell him, if it wasn't for ECW, there wouldn't be an Attitude Era. Well, I created the Attitude Era, so you can't be in ECW. So I think he did the first one, or they created the first one, just to test the water, and the reaction that they got, I think they were surprised by. I don't think they expected the rapid fandom, because they weren't getting that in for every match. There was, people went crazy for whoever came out, and they weren't getting that on their events. The second one was a completely different animal. They knew they were going to set up the program. We went into, or at least I did, went into the pay-per-view being told, we're gonna restart ECW. We want you to be part of it. Great. Did the pay-per-view, went to the TV taping 2 nights later in Trenton, New Jersey, stood around, did refereed it was a battle royal. That was the only match that I was involved in. And I think they only had maybe 2 matches that night. And I think John probably did the other. Never offered a deal. So then it started changing. Their attitude, or their reasoning started changing. Well, we want you for all the shows that you can get to. And remember, they were going to put us out on tour on our own. They had shows scheduled in Wisconsin and all over the place. We want you to get to the shows that you can get to. Well, I can't get to Wisconsin. Now I've got a 9-to-5 job. I own a courier service. So I'm not walking away from, I'm not shutting it down to restart this dream again. So like the next week was in Albany, New York. It's a bit of a drive, but I did it, and still no deal offered. Then it became, then the next week was in West Virginia. And I was like, I'm not going to West Virginia. That's too much of a drive for me. I'd miss 2 days of work, but the whole bit. Then that's when it became, well, we'll let you know when we need you. Okay. Well, the next event was at the arena, and TV at the big building. It's the Wells Fargo now. Never heard from them. And I've never been one to go to a show trying to look for work or beg for work, or what about me, or I'm over here, look at me. And I never called them to say, hey, do you need me? And I said, well, that's it. And never looked back, and don't regret not doing it, because it wasn't the same. And I don't blame the guys who replaced other wrestlers. Those guys put on great matches. It was just, I always say this, it wasn't my mom's ECW anymore.
No. And it seemed like a lot of the original talent were used as cannon fodder, when I couldn't understand why they were being used. And I'm talking about Steven Richards and
right,
that's incredible. And those guys, like they seem to be just getting squashed, and it made no sense to me.
Right. The ring announcer, Steve DeAngelis, they used him for the pay-per-view. He showed up 2 days later at Trenton, and they told him, we don't need you. Didn't even give him enough time to get dressed. They met him at the door. We don't need you.
Yeah,
so I knew right there everything was changed.
That was a head scratcher. I've also interviewed Steven a couple of times, and he had also indicated that they had made reference to offering him a contract, and then he was met at the door with that. So yeah, not the best business practice, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the contracts, one was offered to this isn't my story to tell. I'll just tell it basically. John Finnegan was offered a deal and turned it down because they didn't offer health care, and he needed it for his family. I didn't need it, so I would have been willing to take a contract, but never came. So, and I was fine with that. Next in line was Mike Keener, and one of the final referees with ECW. They never offered him a deal either. So, they had their plan all set, and they just let us hang in the wind.
Did you, during this time frame that you were doing these events, did you run into Mr. McMahon or have any interactions with him?
The only time was the first pay-per-view. He had come in. We were having a meeting. I forget who was running it, but he came in and he said, "Go out there and give the ECW fans the show that they want, and I'll be signing the checks, not Paul." Ha ha ha. And left. But I got to stand behind him in Gorilla while the matches were going on, because we wanted to, referees always ready to go. So I just happened to be right behind him because there was no room to stand next to him, or the stage was very small, and that's where they had the Gorilla set up.
In terms of reunion shows in general, I know they ran a couple under the Hardcore Homecoming, and then Extreme Rising was a promotion that Shane Douglas was involved in. What are your and then in Canada we had Hardcore Road Trip in 2013 and 2014, which advertised itself as ECW in Canada and had some ECW originals there. Most notably, my partner, ECW original Kingpin Medina. But what are your thoughts on those tribute shows in general that seem to pop up every now and again?
I really couldn't give you an opinion on them because I wasn't invited and wasn't part of them. So I've never seen any of them. Never seen a single match of any of them. Even the TNA pay-per-view that they did, I wasn't a part of. So I really can't give you an opinion on those.
Do you think it's disingenuous to continue to try to make money from the spirit of the original ECW, or?
I think it depends on how it's done. I think what's going on this for WrestleMania, I think there are different ECW angles throughout, the hundreds and hundreds of independent shows that are cropping up, and all the guests that are going to be at the various conventions seem to be ECW heavy. So I think that so far they seem to be doing well with the way they're doing it. And we'll see what happens after the match.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of a lasting legacy or impact, and this is always a difficult question, but if you had to boil that down, what would you say, given the fact that you were there for the whole shebang, the lasting impact of the ECW phenomenon is on the business today?
Okay, they're out.
She doesn't. She's just being.
I don't know. I as a referee, it's kind of different. We never looked for the spotlight. We never looked to be out there for everyone, to praise or hey, I'm a big fan of yours or whatever. I was just happy to be along for the ride. I had the best seat in the house. If I didn't have to count to three, I would have ordered, a hot dog and a beer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are you up to lately, Jim? And where can the fans keep in touch with your activities and appearances, etc.? Work on social media, sir?
I've made a recent return to the ring. I took 15 years off. I was running a local independent promotion in school called OTW, Old Time Wrestling, and closed everything up kind of during the pandemic, and got back into the ring. The people I sold the ring to offered me a position to do a couple of shows. I was like, okay, let me go back in the ring. And I got to work with John Finnegan again. So that was like, yeah, I'll do that. So I've been doing independents in the New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania area for the last couple of years now. I've done some seminars and signing, doing a lot of signings. I've got a lot of the things like that coming up. Where you can get me is, let's see, I'm always trouble with this right here. that's my X account or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And there, if you want to book me for anything, it has my email on it. You can email me. April is completely booked up.
Mm-hmm.
Most of May is too. There's a couple of conventions coming up in May and one in July that are going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I've been getting a lot of referee books. And I usually put up there on Twitter and also on Facebook. Facebook's the same thing, basically. My upcoming schedule or how you can get a hold of me. And I sell T-shirts. They're all mock T-shirts of rip-offs of some wrestling phrases, such as, EC Ref and W. Instead of Austin 316, referee 123. Acknowledge your referee. Refamania is running wild, which is available in red and yellow.
Is that a pro wrestling tee store? Or is that just
no? It's at TeePublic. So if you go to teepublic.com, go to their search, punch in Extreme Referee, at least one of the shirts will come up, and then you can go to the store from there. But when I do appearances, I've got a handful of the EC Ref and W shirts with me, and I've got pictures and trading cards and DVD and all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome. Well, we'll definitely keep in touch and see what you have on the go. Sounds very full. Last question before I let you go, though, sir, is there's a lot of talk. I recently interviewed Joel Goodhart, Tony Stetson, and last night we had the one and only Johnny Hotbody on the show. There's talk about a TWA reunion show, one last great show. If that comes to pass, would you be in, sir?
If they offer, I'm there. I would love to be there. All they have to do is ask, and I'm there.
Well, we will definitely stay in touch on the basis of that, because Great North Wrestling is interested in working with Joel on that one. So we'll definitely keep in touch. But I want to thank you very much for your time this evening. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. It was fun. Peace, everyone.
Fans, that's it for this edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro